I wouldn't be bummed, as much as I love my Xbox, I wouldn't be bummed if Microsoft completely bowed out of hardware because the profit's all coming from their software.
The Xbox has basically never made money. It's clearly it's a giant loss leader for the company. What this reminds me of is what they ended up doing with the PC.
Yeah, up next, we want to talk about this week's big rumors in the gaming industry, which is Xbox exclusives, and maybe to even bigger rumor capacity, Xbox potentially as a console coming to the end. So there's a lot of buzz about this. We're recording this on Thursday, February 8th. So much like the rumor that we spread last week about Tencent buying D&D, which was debunked like 24 hours later, we'll see how time treats this rumor. So anyway, what's going on? Microsoft, who obviously owns Xbox, has been signaling a move away from exclusivity for first-party games. And there's a lot of hints that their upcoming titles could appear on platforms like PlayStation and Switch. The CFO, Tim Stewart, he's publicly stated that they have intent to start bringing more games to other platforms. And I know one particular game that there's been a lot of specific rumors about is called Hi-Fi Rush. That was the game that I heard at the start of a lot of these rumors. And Satya Nadella has also hinted that this strategy would be more moving forward. So let's just first start by some facts of what's going on with the current situation. So it's still very early, and none of the major new releases like Starfield have been multi-platform. And we do expect that all of the really top-tier first-party IP is going to remain first platform for foreseeable future. But it seems like they might be testing the waters with some of these more niche titles like Hi-Fi Rush. And Phil Spencer did tweet in the last day or two that next week, there's going to be an official business update addressing some of these rumors and topics. So that's kind of just the facts on the ground. Why might they be going down this road? So two things that feed into this, just doubling down on Game Pass as a platform itself. I see some people theorizing that regulatory concerns are part of this. I think that's not as important part of the story.
Yeah, that seems wrong.
Yeah, but I think the other play is like they're becoming more of a content company than a hardware company for gaming. So I mean, they acquired Bethesda, they acquired Activision King Blizzard. And when we think about console gaming, historically, the consoles themselves have always been loss leaders. I wouldn't be bummed, as much as I love my Xbox, I wouldn't be bummed if Microsoft completely bowed out of hardware, because that's not what makes Xbox a great experience right now. And it's also not what makes the company profit. The profit's all coming from their software. So I think it's a very natural move, especially as they've been losing. I checked the numbers. Last year, PlayStation outsold Xbox about 2-1.
Crazy.
Yeah, so they're losing the console wars. Meanwhile, they're building their content empire. And we know that content is what drives the profit. Every console, basically for the history of time, has been like, take a loss on the console, make the money on selling the software, on selling the Razer blades, not the Razer. So that's kind of my thoughts on why I think it is very likely. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, but what I expect for next week is they're going to admit that they're testing the waters for this, but kind of restate. Rest assured, we'll have some amazing first-party exclusive experiences and like call out a few of the big IPs that won't be. But that's kind of what I predict for next week. Xander, I'm sure you have a lot of thoughts here. Is it the right strategy for Microsoft to bow out potentially of the hardware wars, and or is it the right strategy for them to have less exclusivity in their titles?
Yeah, so I read an article yesterday, have not done the fact checking on this, but it said that Xbox has basically never made money. On the hardware, that makes sense. But it's clearly it's a giant loss leader for the company. And they've been trying to crack it for a long time, went through many iterations, and they're where they are now. What this reminds me of is what they ended up doing with the PC. And so what do I mean by that? One of their biggest drivers of revenue still today is Office and the Office Suite. If you recall way, way back in the day, the Office Suite was a Microsoft exclusive. And one of the ways that they ended up increasing distribution to the fact that that is now on every computer in the world, more or less, is the fact that they made it also on Mac. And that's basically been a way that they've been able to sell through their software into every possible place that could possibly be. Very high margin business, one of the biggest business empires in the world. Pretty good strategy. It seems a lot like they're doing that here. I mean, one of the things that we've talked about, they're the kings of recurring revenue. Like basically no one does it better. Game Pass is a recurring revenue. They're loading up on Game Pass content. They have basically some of the biggest IPs in the world now on the game side. Seems like a pretty smart strategy. I mean, if you can get Game Pass and play it on your PS5, it's like, okay, can you play it on your computer too? Well, okay, that seems pretty compelling. Can you play it on whatever old Xbox console you have? Oh, sweet. Can you play it on your Switch on the go? And it's like, shit, I don't have an Xbox, but maybe I'll get Game Pass.
Right. Right. And the other piece of that is like, as those experiences get more accessible, you're more willing to pay a higher price for this. I mean, already if Game Pass increased the price by 20%, I probably wouldn't bat an eye. Right. And if I can seamlessly start taking those experiences, depending on where the regulatory winds blow and Apple policy goes, like if I can start taking those experiences more seamlessly to my iPhone, I can already do a lot of it on PC. That's going to increase the value without incremental development costs that are equivalent for Microsoft. So, I mean, at the end of the day, Microsoft is ultimately a software company. How do you increase the revenue of your software? You get a higher install base. And this is a huge play for just doubling down on that and letting some pride and I think areas of ownership in the past, just letting those go for the name of like what's ultimately going to let us grow the most as a software business in gaming.
We go into a steady state where it's like, okay, there are still Xboxes, but in the same way there's new iPhones. It's like, okay, yeah, marginal improvements. And we do that until it doesn't make sense, then we kill the program.
I think we have 3 to 4 more years of Xbox. I could see like a refresh of this one that's more for like the prosumer segment. I mean, this is just like wild predictions, but I do predict that like within the next 4 years, we'll see the entry point to the what we call today the Xbox ecosystem become separate from the hardware for the average person.
What I just noticed, like I haven't bought an Xbox since 360, I think. I noticed like there's a Series S that just got sunset and there's Series X. It's like, wait, is it the same one? It's like, okay, well, I mean, it seems like they're already moving towards this, like, there's basically just an Xbox, right? It's not the Xbox One or it's not the 360 in the same way that there was like historical console generations. It's like, okay, there's an Xbox machine.
Well, yeah, if you don't follow it closely, I mean, when they launched with the X and the S in the current generation, the S has no physical drive. So, that's the lower price point, wider adoption console. So that's already a step moving you further away from what it means to be a console. That there's no longer any like physical media associated with it. It's only one step from there to like the console itself exists in the ether and exists in the cloud.
Right.
And I think this all boils down to eventually the quote unquote console or platform for Microsoft in gaming. Xbox will be the piece of hardware. And I think Game Pass will become the platform overall.
Right. I mean, we talk about cross-platform. We talk about, ubiquitous experiences. I mean, this just lines up. They're looking around the corner. Makes sense. Think about the strategy for an hour. It seems like a good one.